Because wouldn't you much rather be yourself? And then wouldn't you rather just find people who are like you and like think like you and like can resonate with you and things like that? But you can't do that if you're hiding or not being yourself. So to someone, it might be cringe. It could be like the most god-awful thing they've ever seen in their entire life. But your video is a singular moment in time for them. Because people then go to another video or turn it off and have dinner, go to bed, wake up, and don't think about your cringy video to them anymore. But then your cringy video to someone can mean so much, and they'll be like, oh, let me drop that follow, which means a lot more than someone who's going to just scroll away or write me things.
Hello, my name is Minges and welcome to Unfiltered Conversations with Creators. I'm very happy to have Ash Vandelay as our guest on episode 21 of the podcast. Ash is rated America's #1 motorsports streamer and GT World Challenge host. She's quickly established her name in the world of motorsports and is a big advocate for getting more women involved in the field. All of her socials will be linked down below, and if you enjoyed our chat, it would really help to leave a like, a comment, and subscribe for more Conversations with Creators. Ash Vandelay, we start all the podcasts here with a food-related question, so I wanted to ask first off the bat, green or red apples?
Oh, geez. Red apples.
Why do you pick red?
So I used to like green when I was a kid, but they're just super sweet now. I guess that's my age showing as I get older. So yeah, just red has more variety, and I think red tastes better in pies.
Ooh, okay, interesting. I think red is better for cooking, but the reason I asked that was because I think red is the just superior color anyway, because I think it's just a natural rule now that red is the fastest color on the planet, just mainly because of Ferrari. So I thought that might be fitting to bring you in on that kind of topic. So
I would agree if they were fast. They currently are not.
Currently, no.
Or have not been for a little bit.
Yeah, it's been a bit slow, but we'll get into all that soon. First, I want to start off with how you got into gaming, what were you into as a kid, and how did you get into the world of gaming when you were young?
Oh, so I had a brother who was 6 years older than me, David, and I think because he got a PlayStation and my mom's like, you have to hang out with your sister, I was just hanging out with him in his PlayStation, and then if he got a Game Boy, I wanted a Game Boy. So yeah, I think I just started because my brother was just doing stuff. I wanted to hang out with him. So we played, I remember our PS1, and I remember playing Need for Speed. I also remember we had a desktop at home. It was just really old. Just thinking about like all the desktops that we have now that we use for streaming and stuff. And I played Barbie Veterinarian. And then the Game Boy, I was a really big Pokemon player. So I remember we had blue, red, yellow, silver, gold. I don't know why we had 5 Pokemon games. I think we tricked my mom into thinking that me and my brother each needed a different one when it was really the same game, but just like a different thing, you know?
Yeah.
I don't know if she knew that. So yeah, we were big Pokemon fans too.
You've been exposed now. No, I had the same experience. I had the PS1 and same thing, had to play with my sister. Actually, we started with a Nintendo, so it was mainly Mario and stuff. But then the PlayStation came, there was a Need for Speed. And I remember playing a Spice Girls game as well. It was just really random like that.
That's awesome. I didn't even know there was a Spice Girls game. I'm going to Google this afterwards.
There was it was kind of like one of those, it was kind of like a dance game before you had the dance pads. So you had to time the dance moves with like X, square, triangle, circle to where it was going to be. Yeah,
that's fun.
It was interesting. Anyway.
It was a game.
It was a game. But I find most gamers got into gaming and then sort of eventually found YouTube and to find live streaming and things like that. But how did you get into that kind of space?
So I think like all of us during the pandemic, we just had our mental health were very poor, and I have anxiety in general, but during the pandemic, it was really bad. And just to find communities and such, and just to like interact with people and socialize, because we couldn't really do that at the very beginning of the pandemic. I just went on Twitch and I started watching streamers who were playing the same video games as me. So me and my brother and a group of friends from back home, we played Call of Duty, and we weren't good at it. Don't get me wrong. We were just playing, just to like, we would sit in a house and just like talk to each other like we were on the phone. Like it was just like having a conversation as opposed to actually. We did win a couple times. No dramas. And what else? Stardew Valley. I started playing that on my Switch. Yeah, I just started playing some games that I found, and then I would find those communities on Twitch and just started watching just to interact with people and just like hang out and stuff like that. Sea of Thieves is a big one.
Yeah.
So that's really the reason I started kind of watching Twitch, to be honest.
I came through like a roundabout way. I had a Twitch account through I think, old FIFA games. And then when Warzone came out, I hadn't played Call of Duty for a few years, but I kind of got watching Iceman Isaac, and that was like, linked me to his live stream. And then I found Exact and Jowo, which is how I kind of know you from watching Exact. I'm pretty sure you rated him once, and then I saw your name, Ash Vandelay. I'm like, oh, it sounds like a Seinfeld name. I remember asking you about it in chat. You're like, yeah, from Seinfeld. I'm like, instant follow, just because that's a great vibe I like to see.
Yeah, it's funny because I guess I didn't realize it sounds like a real name to people who don't know Seinfeld. Because to me, it's always been Seinfeld, right? Growing up in New York City, that's all it's been. Vandelay, those jokes and stuff like that with anyone I talked to.
Yeah.
So to me, it was always a fake name. And then I realized to other people, this sounds too real. So it's been a slight problem with like getting media credentials and stuff like that, because people will put it under Vandelay, but then my ID doesn't match. And then I got to explain to the poor lady in this credential center what the hell is happening and why I should get this media credential under a different name.
It's crazy. I can imagine just some of the mix-ups that must happen, but surely there's some people out there who get the reference.
Oh yeah, I'll get that randomly if someone's coming into the Twitch chat or on a social media post. They'll be like, "Oh, Vandelay, like import export." So yeah, there are definitely a handful of folks.
Oh, that's good. So I know that you were streaming a lot of random games that you said, Warzone being one of them, and that's obviously how I found you, connected with you originally. But how did you find that transition from playing games that you enjoy to getting into things like racing games and things like that? Because that's kind of a hard pivot for some people to make, changing games that they stream.
So when I started streaming, I just streamed what I was comfortable with, because it was a goal with my therapist to kind of start streaming. So I streamed a little bit of Call of Duty, just like very like basic, right, in the beginning. And then I streamed Portal as well, because I love that game. I play it like twice a year. And I just know it so well, so I'm able to talk and play it at the same time. And the 2021 Formula One season started, and I was like, oh, there's probably people who talk about the sport, because I've seen IRL streams, so I assumed for some reason that people would be talking about sports and stuff. So I think I searched it, and there are a lot of great F1 content creators. Just their type of content isn't for me. And I was like, if I feel this way, there's probably someone who's looking for my kind of content or my kind of stream. So I started streaming the F1 2021 season and just doing like live watch alongs with the sport and like the live timings and having a map and stuff. You can't show, unfortunately, the race because obviously TV rights. Unfortunately, depending who you ask, right?
Yep.
Not the people who paid billions of dollars for it or not. Like, please don't do it. So yeah, and then I kind of just started growing because I started talking and covering motorsports, and then you just end up playing the F1 sim racing game. Well, sorry, our Simcade game, before everyone starts angrily typing in the comment section. It just, the audience overlaps. So people are like, oh, do you play this? And I'm like, no, I don't. So I started playing it, and the audience overlapped. And eventually when you're in the Simcade, sim racing world, just all the games, people start asking about all the games because there's not too many. So I got into iRacing. I know a little bit of ACC. Some on the PC. I don't really play Gran Turismo, but familiar with it. Did play it when I finally got a PlayStation. Regardless, just started sim racing a lot. And then with the watch alongs, people just kept asking for more. They're like, hey, can you cover NASCAR, IndyCar, IMSA, WEC, etc. So I just kept doing it.
So it wasn't really like a plan of yours to get into this sort of where you are now. It didn't come about from a past that you had in mind. It kind of just came about by following what people were asking and following what the audience were asking for.
Yeah, exactly. It's funny. I think there's some kind of meme that's like, oh, people think it's a straight line or some kind of motivational poster, and then they show you that it never is. That's literally what it has been for me. It's just been random paths diverging and going backwards sometimes, and then straying off into another section. It's just been a wild journey to get, at least to today.
I think also, just to give yourself some credit, you obviously are very familiar and knowledgeable with motorsports and racing and that kind of thing. So is that something you grew up with your family? Like, did you have like a parental influence or anything like that when it came to racing?
I started watching Formula One when I was 13, 14 that year, when I turned 14, because of Robert Kubica joining Formula One. My parents immigrated from Poland in, I think, 1984 or 1985. Anyway, they're big fans of Polish people doing cool stuff. So if anyone's doing something cool, my dad's sending me like news articles about like, hey, did you see this Polish guy? Like, climbed Mount Everest. So when Robert Kubica was getting Formula One, my dad's like, hey, we have to watch, obviously, to support our fellow countrymen. And I was like, okay. So yeah, I started watching Formula One. None of some folks start much younger, but yeah, I started at around 13. And then when I went to college in Florida, just NASCAR was there, and it was with the Daytona 24. And then that was a trip kind of that some folks in my college did because it was each kind of party throughout the 24 and so and the NASCAR thing. So they're like, yeah, we're doing like a little day trip to so and so. So let's go check it out. So I would join them, and I was like, oh, this is kind of cool because I knew about Formula One, and I was like, what is this? What is this sports car racing? And then just kind of or stock car racing, and then kept going down that rabbit hole.
Like that. And obviously you enjoy that kind of thing. I don't think you could be in this kind of thing for that long and do the amount of stuff that you're doing without having a degree of enjoyment or a large degree of enjoyment.
That is very true. And it's very obvious from some other creators. You definitely have to enjoy motorsport or enjoy the sport you're covering, I think is the basicness of it. Otherwise, you're not having a good time or producing stuff that, because if you're forcing yourself to sim race or forcing yourself to enjoy the sport you're covering, it's going to be very obvious. People know that you're not enjoying it.
There's only so long you can fake it on camera.
There's only so long you can fake it.
Yeah.
You just got to do, especially because streaming's hard enough as it is. I think you and I both know that. Just turning on the camera, especially on days you're just like, I really just want to lay down and do nothing. You're like, I got to stream and put on a show. And you're like, and if you hate streaming, if you hate the thing you're streaming about, it just makes it like you're definitely not going to turn on that camera and give a shit about whatever you're doing.
Exactly. But I do like that you are very open with the mental health side of things. I think that's something that people need to be able to talk about more. And I find it interesting that you had the racing thing and streaming in general as part of like a plan to help you through a time like that. I mean, that was in COVID times, a lot of people were going through very similar situations where it's like you get locked down, or like where I live here was very strict lockdowns, couldn't see anyone, and finding community through online experience was kind of like the way to try and get through things together.
Yeah, because everyone was sharing the same, like you would find these, right, like you said, communities that people who shared the same passions as you, who are also locked down in those early times. So you always had someone to talk to about whatever it is your interests were. Those were the times.
I also just wanted to add that it's interesting to me that you said you found streaming as a path to get through a lot of these issues, because sometimes I've found for myself personally, streaming can be you finish the stream, you get off, and you feel this like buzz, like, oh, that was really good. I had these people come through. I got to talk to these people. We did this. But there's also sometimes where it's the opposite, where if it's like maybe a bad stream, things went bad, maybe not many people showed up, you kind of get that opposite effect where it's a bit of a low. And I find that streaming has helped me personally a lot, but also sometimes can really exacerbate sometimes some of the bad feelings as well.
Yeah, I think if I'm feeling really bad, then I don't stream and just take that mental health day, and I'll stream the next day, or like just change up my schedule so it's still consistent. But that's a very good point, that it does emphasize if there's something going on, it's definitely emphasized, or you're thinking about it a little bit more, or depending what you're covering, it's definitely a little rough when you don't want to stream, or like, you're just like the spotlight's on you literally, because you have like, I have these two massive lights on. It's like if I turn them off, it's just nice and dark in here.
Yeah, I mean, you'd normally game like that and not have them in your face. You'd like,
right.
If you were spending time on your own, you don't have to be on per se, but like when you got a camera turned on, lights are flashing. It's sort of like, it's a heightened version of yourself.
Yeah, and then after some motorsport streams coverage, because they'll last a couple hours, right? Because like a race for at least for Formula One is 2 hours, and I want to do a pre-race show and like talk about post-race. So let's say after 4 hours of just doing or coverage, I turn off everything and I just go lay down. Like I need to just not do anything for a little bit and like stare at the ceiling, because you've just had that, I don't know, you were just turned on for so long.
Yeah,
you just had to put on a show for so long. It's just like, okay,
it's like you can be very fatigued and tired, but also like very wired at the same time. It's a very hard very hard thing to come down from and relax sometimes, especially if you stream at night times.
I've been trying to stream a little bit in the mornings now. I've been trying to change my schedule just a little bit, just because I've been traveling so much. And yeah, I definitely like the mid-afternoon or morning streams because then you realize you have like the rest of the day as opposed to me streaming at night where like it's kind of leading up to it. I don't know how folks do that.
It's rough. It can be rough. And can throw you into a weird cycle where you are asleep during the day and wake at night and you kind of don't get anything else done other than being on stream at nighttime when everyone else is asleep, generally. So talk to me about how you got into doing this as like being signed by an esports team, doing this really seriously compared to starting off and kind of just following what you enjoyed.
I did it by accident. It's just when you start, you're like, oh, like, yeah, that would be cool, but it's never going to happen. And then you just keep doing your work and then you just keep growing and then it happens. I think the turning point was getting my first media credential at a motorsport race for GT World Challenge America at Sebring, Florida. And that was cool. And I think because I got that credential, eventually people are like, oh, like she got it from this racing series. Like this is getting a little bit, like this is getting serious. Like she's able to get a media credential from Motorsports. Like this is something. And then when you meet people in the paddock at Sebring, everyone was really nice. But then they saw me again at the Indianapolis 8-hour race. They're like, okay, she's coming back. Like, this is serious. Like, she wasn't just there to do like a little influencer thing. Like, she's being consistent and working with us. And then people start really networking and hanging out with you and like helping you out with stuff. So if you show up and network and are friendly, I think the biggest piece of advice I always have people ask and I say is be kind. And sometimes that throws people off because they're like, oh, maybe it's like the networking thing, or maybe it's like a piece of equipment. It's like, no, just don't be an asshole. And because especially in our niches, which are, people are like, oh, there's so many streamers. It's not really. Like a lot of streamers know each other. And then in motorsports, everybody knows each other. So definitely don't be an asshole. That's very obvious. And people will find out. And especially if you're like smack talking other teams or companies that you worked for, like people talk, like we're all in one big group chat at the paddock. People know.
Yeah.
So, and then we're all going through stuff. Like motorsports is a high stress environment, right? Like drivers risk their lives. You have the pit crew who do as well. You're dealing with fuels, your tires flying everywhere. So just be kind because people are just going through a lot of stuff regardless as human beings and doing their job. And then if you're just polite, people really take that to heart and they appreciate it. So just like saying please and thank you can really open a lot of doors, which constantly surprises me. But it's just being polite, saying please, thank you, offering to help with stuff that even if I'm not there for example, if I'm just there to stream for a race or just cover a race, I'll be like, hey, can I help you set up or like put these out, or like I'll see someone struggling. Like I've been there before with my my full-time job of setting things up and just needing an extra pair of hands. Like it doesn't, I'm already there. I don't mind helping.
Yeah, it's one of those basic things that you would think would have to be just a given, but sometimes can be overlooked. There are, I don't know,
you would
maybe
think it's
egos?
a given, but it's wild.
It's wild.
It's wild how much it's not a given.
You run into that a lot in that sort of when you go up to those sort of high intense situations that people either get an ego or they just get lazy and they kind of just are more demanding rather than let's work together kind of situation.
Yeah, it might be the ego thing. It's just so strange. Like we're all dealing with stuff. Have you been outside? Like it's rough out there. Like just be a good person. You don't have to be fake. I think there's a big distinction of being like, we should be best friends. Like, no, not everyone's gonna be your best friend, please. But you could be like, hey, good morning. Like we don't have to be friends, but we can be cordial to each other because life's shitty sometimes. So just say good morning. Thank you for having me here, and like that's it. Like even the most basic of saying stuff like that goes a long way.
You can work with someone that you don't like, and you can be friendly without being friends.
Yeah, there's this weird, I don't know if you notice this in like the content creation space. Everyone's like, oh my God, you and all the other motorsport streamers must be like the best friends. I was like, no, we don't know each other that well. Like, I don't know them. I have no beef with them. Like, I have no problems with anyone. But I also just don't know them that well. Or like maybe we do know each other, but like we wouldn't hang out with each other in real life. And we both know that. And that's okay. Like, we still talk.
Yeah, that's okay.
We're still nice to each other, polite to each other. But not all of us are like the bestest of friends.
Yeah, it is a bit of a niche. It is a bit of a niche thing. So I would imagine that I don't want to say close knit after all everything you just said then, but you kind of like, you are familiar with the people in the scene. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Like we all know who is who.
Yeah. So it's like when you kind of show yourself as I'm here, I'm serious about doing what I do. It must be probably easier to network with people because they know that you're serious about being in the space as well.
Yeah, that's the big thing. I think you mentioned earlier, when you're streaming, you better stream something you like. Or if you don't like it, it's very difficult. They definitely know when you're networking and showing up that you do like this and you're serious about working or whatever you said it was. So for me, being an advocate of women in motorsports, just getting more motorsports out there, getting more fans out to the crowds. I think once you talk to people, show up multiple times, explain what you want to do and like what you're doing and like why it's so important to you, people are like, oh, okay. Like she's not just dancing around the paddock, hanging out, trying to like look cool. This is a real thing.
Yeah, you're passionate about it, and I think that's one thing that I'm super I super admire about you is that you are passionate about putting forward the things that interest you, and you're not kind of out there just, oh, this is me in front of a camera. You're actually talking about the things that you find important.
I appreciate that. And that's kind of, I mean, it's a pro and con because a lot of people have for content creation and filming, a lot of folks have like schedules like, oh, I'll film on a Sunday and Monday, edit Tuesday, Wednesday, and I'll have videos for the rest of the week. If I'm not interested in the subject that I'm filming about, I can't just make a video about it. It's like an inherent flaw that me and my editor go through all the freaking time. He's like, Ash, I need videos. Do you want me to write you a script? It's like, yeah, you can write me a script about something, but if I don't care about it or like I'm not really interested about it this week, I'm just, bleh. You can just tell through the video that it's just like, yeah, I just don't care. But then I'll find like a random subject in the morning when I'm scrolling or reading the news, and I'll be like, I should make a video about that today.
Yeah.
And then that's what I'll do.
I mean, I've noticed, I went through a lot of your socials in lead up to this. There is quite a few wild comments that you get on some of your like TikToks and shorts and things like that, and you manage to spin them around into another video themselves. Like another one of those comments was like, you don't even watch, don't pretend like you watch a motorsports, and you turn that into a viral TikTok.
Oh yeah, that was funny. Fragile men are hilarious. For some context for folks listening, it was, I forget what TikTok it was. Why did he comment that? Anyway, he commented on TikTok that says you don't even watch motorsports. Oh, I made a video about Garage 56. Or something.
Yeah.
I was explaining Garage 56, which is when the Hendricks Motorsport entered a Chevy Camaro, the NASCAR Cup car, but of course modified for Le Mans 24, essentially. And someone commented, you don't even watch motorsports or something to that effect. You're like, don't pretend you watch motorsports, right? So then I just made a video that showed all my media credentials and my pictures with drivers that have taken, like Daniel Ricciardo and Tony Kanaan. And then me covering the race at Circuit of the Americas, like literally at the track, like you see the track behind me. And then the last one was like my article from redbullracing.com that I've signed with them. That was funny. It just takes 2 seconds to like look at my profile and see what it says on the top.
I was going to say, it takes 2 seconds to look at your profile just to see. Yeah, that's probably not a good comment to make.
Yeah, they just couldn't even like click into that. But regardless, at some point you're never going to convince people, right? You just like have to let that go. If that makes sense, there's always going to be negative comments, and then because I could have said all those things, and that guy could still be like, "You don't care about motorsports." I'd be like, "Okay, there's no way I'm done. I've gone to this many races and gone this deep for something I don't give a shit about."
Sometimes when people's minds are made up on what they think about you or a subject, there's no turning them around. There's no convincing.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, like you were saying, when it comes to the content side of being a content creator, I mean, a lot of people are comfortable streaming and putting in hours in front of a camera like that. But was it natural for you to make videos, to make shorts and all that kind of thing? Or was that kind of like a byproduct of your streams?
That's a great question. I think at first everyone's a little bit awkward, but after a while I really didn't mind. It was more stating my opinion and not being afraid of any kind of like comments. And now it's just like, I don't care. You just kind of Hakuna Matata it, or like just block the comments you don't agree with, or people who are being really rude. I've always liked talking, if that's not obvious. I always got that on report cards that I talked too much growing up in school. So yeah, I think it was fine. And I had things to say and I have things to say. So yeah, you just turn on the camera, which is the power of this century, this millennia, is that we can do that.
Yeah, and you can get really creative with it. Like you said, you'll find an idea that day and just make a video. And you mentioned you have an editor who will help you with things. When did you get them on board, and when did you find was like a tipping point from making your own things to needing people around you to help you?
Sure. So I have one editor who I've been working with for a while. His name is Wolf, and in Brazil, and he helps me with my YouTube when I did my watch-alongs. The problem is when I say did because now I travel a lot during the F1 weekend, and I'm no longer doing my watch-alongs as often as I would like. So this is a little bit new for me. But he would essentially edit my watch-alongs to reaction videos on YouTube because those like surprisingly do well, or like people like those, which is wild to me. But like you just go where the people are, and you just go where the views are sometimes, and it's low effort, right? Because I already do it. Like I'm already live streaming the race, already talking about it. So he would just take it right after and just make a quick video and post it on there. So I really appreciated that. And CJ, who does currently my shorts, I just like the way his style is, if that makes sense. Because gosh, I try to edit on my phone. And my eyeballs hurt, and I got my job, and like I just don't have time and the way I think of ideas. So I found CJ. He's been really helpful. He helps make about 3 shorts a week, and if not, we'll just like maybe do 4 shorts one week and 2 shorts the other week, and just kind of coincided that way. But he definitely helps just organize like the really big videos. But there's also videos that do well on TikTok, which is just like talking to the camera. I did one this past weekend in Montreal by accident. Like I thought it was just like a stupid comment, and for some reason it got a lot of views. And I was like, of course it did.
It
gave me like 3,000 followers, and I was like, why is this a thing? Why is this happening?
It's sometimes like that, where it's like the one that you put the least amount of effort into, it just takes off, and the one that you try and put everything into just sometimes flops.
Oh yeah, that's the worst, because you're like, I really care about this one looks really cool, and it's like, oh okay, I guess no one else thought it was cool.
Yeah. Put in all that time and effort for nothing, but fair enough.
And there's me walking in the street in the rain, and it gets like 400,000 views, and you're like, ugh.
Yeah, do you get recognized when you walk down the street in some of these sort of like, when it's sort of like a race time, a weekend away somewhere, does anyone recognize you?
I've been recognized once at the Indy 500, which was pretty cool. Because they're like, so I heard someone go, Ash Vandelay, and I was like, that's me.
Yeah. Was it kind of like a surreal feeling, or did it just feel like cool, normal?
It was both. It was I didn't realize, because no one's ever called me Ash Vandelay, right? Everyone just calls me Ash when they meet me. I'm like, oh, I just go by Ashley, and then eventually they meet me, they realize like Vandelay is not my real last name. But yeah, everyone just calls me Ash, right? Like no one's ever said my full username before, I guess. And then someone be like, oh, Ash Vandelay. I'm like, oh, that's so cool. That's me.
Was it like, let's take a photo, let's take a selfie signature kind of thing? Or was it just like, oh, this is like cool to chat to you kind of thing?
It was definitely just, it was like a cool to chat kind of thing. This gentleman works in motorsports, and he was like familiar with my work across like the motorsports worlds that I'm in. So he was like, oh, it's just so cool to see you in person. I'm so glad you made it to the Indy 500. Like, appreciate your work. Like this, we should talk a little bit more, or we should see each other in the next race, etc. So it was just cool to I guess network in that way. My virtual business cards, you can say.
Yeah. And in terms of networking, do you have an agent that goes ahead and reaches out to brands for you, or are you like a one-man kind of, I'll go out and network myself kind of thing?
Am I supposed to? I wish I had an agent. That'd make everything a heck of a lot easier. It's just me. I have an email that says it's team@ashvandelay.com. So it makes it look like my team, or like someone is emailing, and like you can have like a fake assistant. It's just me. It's always me. Sorry guys, if you guys listen to this podcast, it's me.
Sorry, Ashley's not interested in this email. Could you please stop talking to us? That's really
be like, oh, she says she has to pass up at this time. And it's like, it's just me saying, it's me talking.
Just an easier way to say no. In terms of working with Redbull, that must have been like a super cool opportunity. How did that come about, getting signed by Redbull themselves?
Oh, that's a great question. I think a few creators got signed by them, and I was in talks to sign with them earlier. There was some like contract stuff. There's always, so with motorsports, everything is either super last minute or it's dragged out, and then it's like rushed at the last minute. There's a lot of stuff that goes on behind the scenes with motorsports. It's wild. So with the Red Bull thing, I've been talking to them for a little bit. It was kind of just churning a little bit. So I just like kept doing my thing, and I kind of got more close with other motorsports like SRO, GT World Challenge, things like that, NASCAR. And I think eventually they're like, hey, we have a spot open. We appreciate that you do all motorsports. You also sim race consistently. So do you want to are you interested? And this is what we can offer, and this is what we're paying, etc. And I was like, hell yeah, sign me up.
That's an unreal opportunity. Obviously they were scouting you for a while. Like, how did they get in contact with you? And did you think it was real at the start, or did you think this is just another scam?
First, when it took a while, I was like, this is they're just dragging their feet because they don't want me signed with someone else. They just want me on my toes. No, but then it got real. I guess it's just being consistent. And again, not just realizing it's a business. Sometimes the folks you're talking to don't have the super say or control and stuff. And it's easy to get like upset or like blah, blah, blah. But like no one owes anyone anything. And we never signed a contract, right? I think it's important for folks to remember that. Like make sure if you're working with someone or something or like a consistent brand, make sure you sign something or get in writing. So yeah, there was like no hard feelings. They were just doing business and stuff. And I just kept doing my thing. And then eventually they're like, hey, we do have a position open. We do have a budget for you. We'd love to sign you. And I was like, okay, great. Awesome.
That's awesome. Have you had any bad experiences, like you said, with working with brands or something like that, where you learned that lesson that you needed a piece of paper?
It's more like pay attention to the details. There's one brand who was like, we double paid you. And I was like, what are you talking about? And it was like this weird, I was like, okay, one, I mean, I guess it is my problem because I obviously want to keep back your money, but also like, how did you do this? And they paid me, so I saw that they paid me my bank account, but I didn't realize they paid me my PayPal. I don't get notifications and I don't use my PayPal for really anything. It's just there. So they're like, oh, I was like, they're like, send me a screenshot of your latest banking statement. I was like, that's weird.
That's weird.
So I like found their payment and I like sent the screenshot of that date and time. And they're like, oh, we paid you through your PayPal and like back charged me on my PayPal. I was like, this is weird. I was like, what is happening? This is like less of a contract. This is more like, what happened here? Because I think they accepted payment through PayPal or the account. So I was like, I have both. That's an option. So maybe they accidentally paid both. Anyway, that was weird. So always get receipts, I guess, so they know where they paid you. Because I was also traveling a lot. And they're like, we need the money back. And I was like, this sounds like you're trying. This is so weird. But luckily, that's all resolved. They got their money back. I still have my payment from the original bank account. But that was just like a weird situation because they're like, we double paid you, giving you our money back. And I was like, I don't know anything about this.
Yeah, that's super weird.
There's just been ones where it's hard when you're beginning as a creator because a lot of people want to give you like free product, but product doesn't pay the bills. Like you can't give your landlord a t-shirt or energy drinks as payment. So that's definitely hard to turn that into money. I definitely appreciated the experiences at first in my previous years at races, but now definitely I ask for some form of payment or coverage of either hotels and travel cost when going to cover races and stuff, because that does take a huge toll out of the good old bank account.
Yeah, I was going to say that would be a huge expense when you're going to events live, coming out of your own pocket and doing all those kinds of things. There should be some sort of compensation for that.
Yeah, I think motorsports is still really new in this whole like influencer content creation kind of realm, if that makes sense. So, right, with fashion brands, they have it down pat. They know exactly how to pay you, what that is, what that means. Not that I worked with fashion brands, I've just seen it evolve over time for like the YouTube, the beauty industry, and things like that. Like, they are down pat. For motorsports, this is so new. They're like, we don't know what to do. Like when I sometimes go to races and I'm like, hey, I'm here. What would you like me to cover? What do you want me to talk about? And they're like, oh, just do whatever it is that you do. Okay. And I want to be like, do you know what I do?
Yeah.
Or do you just know that I have a bunch of followers that we talk about motorsports and you're okay with that? Like you don't care otherwise. So it's still kind of new and figuring it out. So I guess in that way, I can take more of a consulting kind of role and help them figure out how to use influencers and content creators and such.
It would help that I guess that you did get signed along with a few other creators as well at the same time, where you can kind of work together in that way. Is that the kind of role that you guys have been, brief you guys have been given?
Oh, for Redbull.
For Redbull, yeah.
Oh, Redbull's been fine. Like Redbull makes sense because they're like them using their esports team / their marketing department that we're under.
Yep.
So that's been fine. And like going to races, right, in attendance and things like that. Like that's an easy W. But when you go to other motorsport events, whether it's sometimes someone went to the Clash at the Coliseum with NASCAR and NASCAR paid for everything, but then they didn't give them any brief when they were there. They're like, oh, have fun. They're like, what? And they're like, what do you want me to talk about? Like, I'm here, ready to work. And I think Call of Duty does this very well. Whether we like Activision or Blizzard as a company, I understand. We can talk about that some other time. But what they do with content creators, or at least Twitch streamers, right? When I think Caldera came out, people got packages, like a suitcase of like a Hawaiian t-shirt or Hawaiian style type t-shirt, and they got like influencer gifts essentially and like the hype around it, and they do a really good job of promoting their streamers. Meanwhile, in sim racing, right, it's just, you can't even, like, that would be great if they could send us those kind of packages or streamer stuff. I got my first kind of streamer package from the F1 Manager folks, the video game. They got us a branded stream deck, which is really cool. And that's
cool.
The only thing I've ever like physically received from a brand in motorsports or team. Oh, excuse me. I got a candle that smelled like a tire once.
Okay. That's wild.
You got fashion bloggers getting like Louis Vuitton and Dior, and I'm getting candles that smell like burnt rubber, which is I guess is fine if like you're into that kind of smell of like the racetrack. But then when you're lighting it in your very tiny apartment, the smell kind of overwhelms you, and you're like,
it's one of those smells you kind of want to get away from sometimes.
Yeah. So you're like, I appreciate the lulls that this provided me, but yeah, there's no like gifts in motorsports. Like no one's giving stuff. People say race attendance, which is pretty big, but then you're still working, right? Like I'm not drinking champagne in the Paddock Club. Like I am. I have to, for SRO, I have to stream during the races. So I'll be in wherever streaming corner they put me or whatever space they have for me. Like I don't get to walk the paddock and things like that. I luckily get to go, which is very fortunate, and I love to do that. And you hear the cars IRL, but people are like, "Oh, it's so glamorous." I was like, "No, it's still work. Like you're still working." I think it's the very important part.
Do you still get the same enjoyment when you attend a race that you did previously, now that you're working? Or does it sort of like, it becomes more of a business side of you that comes out rather than enjoying the day, enjoying the race, enjoying the atmosphere?
So that's difficult to say because how do I explain this? There was a creator that I saw that said, yeah, I quit my 9 to 5 to now work 24/7 as a content creator, because you're constantly thinking of, or if you see something, you're taking photos or showing that you're there. It's really frustrating because you just want to sit and enjoy the moment and not check your phone and not have to worry about posting stuff or people know what race you're at. So I've been trying to get better about that. This weekend I'm going to Watkins Glen for IMSA and not to work. Okay, actually that's a lie. I did send a DM to a team, but it'd just be really cool to meet them and just like shake their hands and just to meet them in person. But otherwise, I didn't set up any interviews. I didn't do anything. I just want to go watch a race. Like I just want to go hang out with my friends and watch a race and not have to worry about that kind of stuff. And then just like post freely as I want to on my social media and not have to worry about that kind of stuff. So it does get a little like, man, I wish I was just in the grandstands with my cooler drinking a beer as opposed to working. But I take those opportunities as they come. So luckily for the Indy 500, I got to do a little bit of both, thanks to Tony Kanaan. And for SRO, there's going to be a really cool balance. I have a really cool opportunity to go to Spa 24 with them. Like I'll be working, but also I'll be there so early. I get to do a little bit of both, enjoy my time in Europe, as well as enjoy the race. And obviously not covering the full 24 hours, which I greatly appreciate. So that'll be really fun to do that and walk around. So yeah, it comes with a bit of balance and kind of just learning and taking the wins or taking the opportunities that you see them to not work, if that makes sense.
Yeah. What does a typical day or a week look like for you when you're not traveling and you're not away covering races and you're at home, you're taking care of your streams and life and everything like that? What does a normal, typical work week look for you?
Man, it's just all over the place depending on my job schedule too, because I have IRL jobs, so I got to go to meetings and such. So it's just random. I mean, I don't have a good answer. It's just, again, I film videos when I'm passionate about it, and I try to also do it around my shower schedule where my hair looks good. So I'll film around that schedule and my streaming schedule, which usually coincides. And I do a really bad job of batch filming, so maybe I'll film like 2 videos, and then I'll film like another 2 videos in the later of the week. But yeah, I try to stream Tuesdays and Thursdays, and then weekends for motorsports if I'm at home, some watch-alongs.
I think the wildest thing that I've heard you say is that you still have a regular work job, and this is not your full-time thing, content creation. That's crazy to me.
Yeah, I guess you can say that.
It seems like it's a very time-consuming thing, is what I mean.
Yeah, well, I'm in the United States, so I have to realize with that health insurance, like I just need, right? Like that it is what it is.
It's a bit of stability.
Yeah, it's stability. I don't have to worry about too much. Like I'd be more choosy about like who I work with, because you'll see a lot of folks do like the mobile game stuff or like HelloFresh or whatever, and I don't depend on that income. So I can be just more choosy with the ads that I do, which is very fortunate for me. Don't get me wrong. I understand it's a complete privilege. Because some folks, you have to take those opportunities as they come. And for motorsports, there's a few and far between. So when you get them, you have to grab onto them. And I'm lucky enough where I can then also pay for that travel that I did all those time for the motorsports before I was signed for stuff and be able to do that.
Okay. That's really interesting that you say that. And I found it weird that you mentioned that the only physical thing that you got was the Stream Deck. I would have thought, just off the top of my head, like a racing chair, like a chair for your stream in the background would have been something that would have been ideal for a gift from a sponsored company.
Sim racing is a different deal, right? But when you're talking about IRL motorsports, like, so the way I distinguish it is the video game, like the sim racing side of virtual, like, yeah, you can do the gaming stuff, like the Logitech stuff. We're talking about IRL motorsports, and these companies, I'm surprised NASCAR doesn't send out, they have this in the 5th year anniversary, like they never send out merch to like big influencers and stuff like that. I'm not saying me, I'm just saying like the celebrities that invited to races that I've seen in social media. You should be getting like these packages of like, hey, NASCAR 75th year, like here's a book about it, here's a t-shirt, here's that really cool jacket, like, and that's like an easy W. All that kinds of stuff. And like that's just not done yet in motorsports. Or if I guess some folks got some stuff from Pennzoil for Father's Day this week. It's like few and far between, if that makes sense. I'm just comparing it to the beauty industry, which I guess has a different product, right? Because you're not sending people cars, like you can send them lipstick or like samples of things. But I think merch is probably the easiest thing you can do in motorsports.
Do you think motorsports is sort of maybe stuck in that old loop of doing things compared to some of the way a lot of other brands and sort of labels and things have sort of modernized their approach to marketing themselves?
Oh yeah, absolutely. They definitely are an old school mentality. It's still just a bunch of old white dudes at the tippy top. And there's still like a huge thing for like women to try to break through and kind of deal with that and stuff.
Do you see any movement in that kind of thing at your time so far in the last few years?
Yeah, but surely it's getting there. But you just got to keep fighting the good fight and finding those crowds or like finding those opportunities or places where people like care about that stuff and will lift you up, as opposed to like just saying things. I mean, like, yeah, we'll help you, and then they don't actually help you. You know?
Is there a lot of have there been situations where it sounds kind of like lip service when they kind of say, we want to do this and we want to start working with promoting females in the sport and all this kind of thing, but not sounding, it turns out that the final product is not really genuine. It's more just lip service.
Well, yeah, I think that's what F1 is doing right now.
Really?
Sorry, Formula One. Not sorry. I mean, what they did with W Series, right, and now they were in administration, and now what they're doing with F1 Academy, it's just, they're like, oh, we care about women in motorsports, but we're not going to broadcast any of this. We're not going to really promote it that much in any other way. There's going to be not really a lot of merch. There's not going to be, I think they're just putting a hole in a dam and not realizing they need to fix the whole dam. They're just plugging one problem. With women in motorsports, it's just a systemic issue of girls aren't pushed towards karting because they're told not to, that it's not girls. And being a race car driver is like 0.01%, right? So just all the boys that go through it, I mean, a very small percentage go through it anyway. So if you have 2 girls that do karting, I mean, the odds of them becoming professional drivers are very, 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 very low. Then, so you just need more numbers and mass. So that's kind of the same thing with getting girls into STEM education. Same thing with motorsports, kind of go hand in hand. So of course, like motorsports is not just race car driving. So you can also do like the STEM side, IT, communications, and marketing. Just realizing those positions are available in that kind of space is also a really big deal.
Is that something you're interested in promoting, and how do you go about doing that?
Yeah, so a big thing I do is interview women with those positions, regardless of what they are, whether they're strategists or they're tire changers or whatever it is, and just highlighting them or just like interviewing them when I can. So just like sending those DMs at races and just mentioning it. I never, during the interviews, just talking to them about their job. It's never like, oh, how does it feel like to be the only woman here?
Yeah.
Because those questions are so annoying when you're talking to women. Like we never ask men that. Like, why do we do that with women? So just talking to them as people and just interviewing them as normal and not just pointing out those things, I think goes a long way in showing some representation.
Yeah, I think when you ask someone, how does it feel like to be the only X whatever type of person in this field. It's kind of like you further make them feel like a different person who doesn't normally belong in that field, rather than normalizing it and saying, how do you feel personally being in this space? Sort of, it doesn't feel as personable if you're categorizing them in a certain way and highlighting it in that way sometimes.
Yeah. Pointing it out too, be like, we know there's an issue with women in motorsports, or the lack of women in motorsports. So, right, just why don't we ask men what they can do better instead of what they always ask like women what we can do. Like, we have any like big power yet in motorsports? Like, we'll get there, but there's nothing I can physically do besides keep being annoying and entering motorsports in an untraditional way than everyone else is doing.
I mean, I think one of the best things is to be highlighting what is actually happening and sort of bring it to light. Like, maybe people aren't aware that you can be this person, work this kind of job in the industry and be involved in a different way than just the driver kind of thing, like you were saying. And I like that you're highlighting that and you bring that out to people. So it's sort of that awareness is mainly probably what's missing. And I think maybe more people should be involved in bringing out that kind of awareness.
Yeah, we don't see a lot of motorsports as a team sport, and we don't see that too often. As in, we mostly hear about the driver and maybe the folks in the garage, and you're like, okay, but a lot of emphasis goes to the drivers, right? Which is great. Like, they're they're obviously very important. But there's so many people behind the scenes that don't get their time to shine, or don't get their moments to be like, hey, I help contribute to this. And that's something, those are the stories I really like to tell.
Yeah. I think if you're passionate about the sport, you like hearing those stories too, because, yeah, like you said, all the coverage is about the drivers, or they're the main centerpiece. But you could say that about any sport, the players mainly on the field to be the main story. But a lot of people who are passionate about a club or a team or anything like that will eat up all the stories about all the people who work in the back room, all the stuff that goes on behind the scenes, and getting to know the people who make up the rest of the team. I think that's something that maybe the people who are more passionate about teams and groups and people like that will always really have an appetite for that kind of information.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's really important to talk about. And so many things go into motorsports, like I said, not only the teams, but like the track, all the volunteers, the track marshals and stuff like that. Like, it's crazy how many of those stories there are.
And a lot of that is volunteers too. A lot of that is unpaid.
Yes, yeah. Which is wild to think about all the time.
Yeah, that's someone who really loves and enjoys being a part of the sport. And they usually have the best stories to tell as well.
Because they've been there for so long.
Exactly.
Or they've done it for so many years, yeah.
So I like that you've come in, you try and shake up, you don't really try and fall into the same way of doing things as other people. You have your own personality, your own spin on your content. And is that something that they said, whoever has signed you or talked to you, been like, just do you? Or have they tried to make you fit a certain way into the sport?
Question. I haven't gotten that yet. Like, trying to fit in, or like, no, you can't talk about this. I'm pretty open. Like, if I can't talk about certain things, like human rights, or like, women's rights, or just having women in motorsport, then we have bigger issues to fry, and I probably don't want to work with you. But no, everything that everyone that I've worked with has been pretty much aligned to what I want to do, and they're completely fine. And I've talked to a few folks in other companies. I'm like, hey, this was said by a member, or like, if someone says this, they're like, yeah, obviously you can't comment on that, but you can state your own opinion, and then people know where you stand, and we're fine with that. And I was like, perfect.
That's fine. So when it comes to reaching out to people, getting, like you said, you DM these teams and you ask if you can meet the team or things like that. How would you encourage people who are getting into the scene and getting into that to get out of their shell and reach out to people, network?
Sure. I mean, I think you'd be surprised by what you can get away with by just emailing or just asking. Of course, be kind, say please and thank you. That's I can't emphasize that enough. And I think it's ridiculous. I know it's insane that I'm just like, oh, make sure you say please and thank you, because we've been taught that since we were so young. Just don't be an asshole. It's wild how many opportunities I've had because they've passed over someone, or someone has just effed up in such a big way because they just weren't a good person. Like, you have to be nice to everyone. And it's just the Yellow Jackets at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, the the volunteers of the track. Like everyone's a human being, and we're all just here because we love motorsport. To make sure you give everyone their respect, which is the big thing. What else do I recommend? Oh, I think making content. I think you just make it. Don't wait for it to be perfect. And I know a lot of people hear that, but one of the biggest pieces of advice is be cringe. Like just be cringe. Because wouldn't you much rather be yourself? And then wouldn't you rather just find people who are like you and like think like you and like can resonate with you and things like that? But you can't do that if you're hiding or not being yourself. So to someone, it might be cringe. It could be like the most god awful thing they've ever seen in their entire life. But your video is a singular moment in time for them. Because people then go to another video or turn it off and have dinner, go to bed, wake up, and don't think about your cringy video to them anymore. But then your cringy video to someone can mean so much, and they'll be like, oh, let me drop that follow, which means a lot more than someone who's going to just scroll away or write mean things.
Yeah.
So just remembering those big things.
I think that's something it's hard for some people to get their head around, especially when you're starting out. If you're just yourself and people enjoy watching you for you, I mean, that's probably the most genuine type of follow that you would ever want. Why would you be someone else, get a follow that way, and then when you kind of want to be yourself on camera, you can't be because you think these people won't enjoy watching you?
Yeah, because otherwise you're not going to get people to watch you. That's like your main goal. And yeah, it's just like if you're going to be a content creator, that means you need people to watch you and follow you. I mean, that's what it is, right? Because otherwise you're just talking to the oblivion. If you want to do that, that's also fine if you want to talk to oblivion. Plenty of YouTube channels with like no followers who people just make videos for fun. If you want to do that, that's fine. But if you have a purpose or a reason, you're going to need to just deal with it. That's the best way I can describe it. I know it sucks. People are like, oh, it's so hard. I know it's hard. It sucks. But you just need to do it. Like, you just need to do it.
Have you had someone that's kind of like been your inspiration in the industry, or maybe not even part of whatever industry you're in, just someone who works hard that you look up to or anything like that?
There are a few folks that I kind of look up to just in the sports world. Mia Kims, who is a journalist for the I think ESPN, but she knows a lot about the NFL. She's just she just makes it effortless. Like, she is who she is. She knows what she knows, and she doesn't have to like prove anything to you, and she just is, which I appreciate. I also get inspiration. I can't watch other motorsport content creators because I don't want like their style to accidentally leak into mine or like steal their content or ideas and things like that.
Yeah.
Like it's just hard for me to watch because it's just something that I'm in. So I do jump into other sports like the MLB creators or NFL or soccer and see what they're doing and see what I can emulate or like bring to motorsports. That might be very, very fun. So those folks on that side are really fun.
Yeah, that's really interesting that you said you take inspiration from other sports in your field. Yeah, that's really cool.
They do such a good job because like, right, if you just do motorsport stuff, then you're stuck in that endless bubble of doing the things that always happens in motorsports. But you're like, oh, what's baseball doing? And you're like, oh, that's actually really funny. Let me bring that over.
Yeah, there's always something you can learn from other people and other industries, of course.
Absolutely. And I think you can also make it your own, like turn it into your own, if that makes sense.
So what would you say, what advice would you give to yourself looking back, maybe from 2020 when you're first starting or even just yourself from a year ago? What's something that you would give advice to yourself?
Oh, this was a little bit easier. It's just, I think I was a little timid at first, and maybe it was like imposter syndrome or like, I don't belong here, or like, oh, I'm just like making these little videos and talking about this stuff, like I'm not important. No, just like double down. I think I could have gone to where I am a lot faster, but I mean, I needed to learn those lessons. It's easy to say now, right?
Yeah, of course.
But yeah, just double down and just be confident in yourself would be a big one.
I like that. Yeah, it's something I think a lot of people need to hear is be yourself. And like you said, double down and don't be shy about being yourself.
Absolutely. That's the big one.
Ash, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It's been a pleasure. I wish you all the best in the coming years, and thank you again for taking the time to come talk.
Thank you, Ryan. Thanks for inviting me. This was really fun. I appreciate talking about content creation stuff and like a mix of motorsports. It's always like a fun subject to touch on.
Thanks. I appreciate that.